Snow had been falling for hours, the kind that muffled the world and made even the loudest pain feel strangely quiet. And on that Christmas night, the streetlights flickered like tired stars over a city that seemed to have forgotten how to care. In the shadow of a closed church, beneath a plastic tarp weighed down by broken bricks, a widow sat with her 2 children pressed against her sides, their breath visible in the freezing air. Across the street, a man with broad shoulders, a stiff limp, and eyes that had seen too much slowed his steps. He was an ex-Navy SEAL who had survived wars, ambushes, and losses that never made the news. Yet what stopped him that night was not danger, but the unmistakable shape of a family being erased by silence. He had told himself for years that he was done saving anyone, but Christmas has a way of reopening doors people swear are locked forever. Before the story continues, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of doing the right thing when no one is watching, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope tonight, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. The man's name was Daniel Cross, though few people ever used it anymore. He lived on the edge of the city in a small apartment with bare walls and a single photograph turned face down on a shelf. After leaving the teams, he had tried to build a normal life, but the skills that once kept him alive made ordinary jobs impossible. Crowds made his chest tighten, loud noises pulled him back to deserts and dark hallways. So he worked nights as a security consultant and walked long distances to quiet his mind. Christmas Eve and Christmas Day were the hardest, reminders of what he had lost and what he no longer allowed himself to want. He noticed the family because of the children's shoes. They were too thin for winter, soaked through, toes red and stiff. The woman's face was pale but determined, the kind of strength that comes from having no other choice. Daniel recognized it instantly. He had seen it in war zones, in refugee camps, in the eyes of people who kept going because stopping meant disappearing. He told himself to keep walking. He reminded himself that he was not responsible, that the world was full of pain and he could not carry it all. Yet his feet slowed, then stopped, as if they had made the decision for him. The widow's name was Maria, though Daniel did not know it yet. She had lost her husband 8 months earlier in a construction accident that left her with unanswered questions and a mountain of paperwork. Medical bills swallowed their savings. Rent fell behind. Friends helped until they couldn't. Shelters were full by Christmas, and pride had kept her away longer than it should have. That night, she told herself she just needed to survive until morning. She kept her children close, whispering stories without words, promising warmth she did not know how to deliver. Daniel stood there longer than he realized, snow collecting on his jacket. His mind raced through risk assessments, through old habits of scanning for threats. But the real threat was simpler and more brutal: cold, hunger, and being unseen. He remembered a Christmas overseas when a village elder had shared his last loaf of bread with soldiers he barely knew. That memory had followed him home, a reminder that sometimes survival depended not on strength, but on generosity. When he finally moved, it was not with dramatic heroism. It was with a quiet resolve that felt heavier than any weapon he had carried. He approached slowly, careful not to startle them, careful not to tower. He gestured toward the church doors, tried them, found them locked. He felt anger rise, sharp and useless. The city had wrapped itself in lights and songs, but left its most fragile out in the cold. Daniel's apartment was small, but it was warm. He had blankets, food, and a heater that worked most days. The idea of bringing strangers into his space made his pulse spike. Trust had been expensive in his life. But something inside him shifted, a line he crossed without ceremony. He motioned, explaining with calm, steady words that there was warmth nearby, that they could come with him, that there were no conditions and no expectations. He made sure his hands were visible, his voice low, his posture open. He waited, because real help is patient. Maria hesitated, every instinct screaming caution. The world had taught her to be careful with her children. But she looked at Daniel's eyes and saw exhaustion instead of hunger, sorrow instead of threat. She saw a man who understood loss without needing it explained. The cold made the decision urgent. She gathered the children, wrapped the tarp tighter, and followed. The walk was longer than it looked. Snow soaked through layers, and the children stumbled, but Daniel adjusted his pace, offering his jacket without forcing it. He carried the smaller child when legs gave out, feeling the surprising weight of responsibility settle into his arms. It scared him how natural it felt. Inside the apartment, warmth rushed to meet them. Daniel set water to boil, pulled out canned soup, bread, anything that could become a meal. He moved with the efficiency of someone used to making do. Maria watched, relief and fear mixing until her hands shook. The children's cheeks slowly regained color. Steam fogged the windows, and for the first time that night, the world outside seemed distant. They ate in near silence, broken only by small sounds of comfort. Daniel avoided questions, letting the moment be what it was. He laid out blankets, turned on soft lights, and sat on the floor with his back against the wall, keeping watch out of habit. Sleep came to the children quickly, exhaustion winning over uncertainty. Later, when the apartment had settled into quiet, Maria told him pieces of her story, not as a plea but as an explanation. Daniel listened without interrupting, his chest tight with recognition. He did not offer solutions he could not guarantee. Instead, he offered what he could control: safety for the night, food for the morning, and help navigating the maze that had trapped her. The days that followed were not a miracle montage. They were slow, practical, and fragile. Daniel reached out to a veterans nonprofit he trusted, one that understood paperwork and persistence. He walked Maria to an outreach center, waded through long lines, advocated when systems tried to push her aside. He helped fix her resume, watched the kids while she filled out forms, and learned their names, their small fears, their quiet bravery. In helping them, he found his own nights growing less haunted. There were setbacks. Applications were delayed. A promised interview fell through. Daniel's old injuries flared, reminding him of limits he hated. He almost pulled back once, convinced he was overstepping, that this was not his fight. But then he remembered the way the children slept that first night, finally warm, and he stayed. Winter loosened its grip. Maria found part-time work, then more hours. A transitional housing program opened a spot after someone vouched for her persistence. Daniel helped move boxes, carrying memories and hope up narrow stairs. The apartment was small, but it had windows that caught the sun. The children laughed more easily. Maria stood taller. On the anniversary of that Christmas night, Daniel found himself walking the same street. The church lights were on this time, doors open, music spilling out. He did not go inside. He stood under the streetlight and let the memory pass through him without resistance. He had not saved the world. He had simply refused to look away. Near the end of this story, if it has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes compassion still matters, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who might need hope right now. And just before we close, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with a single word that represents what this story made you feel, or share a moment when someone's kindness changed your life. Months later, Daniel received a card in the mail. Inside was a photograph of 3 people standing in front of a modest home, sunlight everywhere. No grand speeches, no declarations, just gratitude, steady and real. Daniel placed the photo on his shelf, face up this time. He did not call himself a hero. He did not rewrite his past. He simply accepted that sometimes healing comes not from being rescued, but from choosing to rescue someone else, even when your hands are shaking. And on a cold Christmas night that could have passed like any other, one choice had turned survival into a beginning.